you going through life blind? This is Eyes Wide Open with Nick Thompson. On this podcast, we share knowledge and stories that build human connection while elevating stigmatized societal issues such as mental health, holistic wellness, culture, free speech, and more. All to ensure we show up in the world with our eyes wide open. Hey everyone, welcome to Eyes Wide Open. This is actually a very special last-minute episode where I have, for the third week in a row, actually, I hope you're not sick of it yet, but we have Anita with us, and we hosted a singles event here in Chicago called Chicago's. Wait, did we actually call it Chicago Singles Party, or was it just the Singles Party? And
it was just the Singles Party. Yeah,
I coined the Chicago part, but it was in Chicago, so there's that. But anyway, we were chatting a lot about the event over the last few days, which we had Friday. So by the time you listen to this, it's within a few days. But one of the things that I know I learned talking to people is, first of all, we had over 250 people attend, which blew my expectations out of the water. What did you think to start off? Like, what were your expectations going into the event? And then did the attendance exceed, or how did you feel about it?
Well, I think I told you and Gina, the bar owner, of Backstory, I'm like, I knew we would get at least 100 people. Like that I was feeling pretty confident about. But yeah, I mean, I think we ended up, it was easily over 250 people. And we didn't even take any photos of people in the beer garden and hanging out by the fire.
Yeah,
a lot of
that's
people.
True.
It was like hard to pass through sometimes. So I was very happy with it.
It was, and we had people coming in and out, and I thought it was. At first, I was like, okay, well, let's talk about it. So at first, we had like 90% women. So it was. I would say at least the first hour and a half, it was mostly women. But then the guys started showing up.
Yeah. So lesson learned, guys, you have to show up on time. But I would just see droves of women coming in, especially between I thought people would be maybe strolling in at 6:30, 6:45. And then
when it was scheduled to start at 6.
Right. And everybody was, so many women were coming in at 6 o'clock, 6:15. Then there were more women at 6:30. That's when my stomach started dropping. And I'm like, where are the guys? Because I knew so many of them had confirmed with me that they were coming. And so I had to tell the women, can you please be patient? I swear they're coming. I swear they're coming. But I was getting a little anxious at that point. Yes, because there were a lot of women.
Well, I started asking some of the women that were there because, we were trying to give people name tags, sign people in, sign people up that were interested in the newsletter, get people talking. There was a lot going on that you and I were trying to do, especially at the beginning, I think. And, once I got away and I started talking to some of the single ladies that were there, I asked them, I'm like, did you invite any of your single guy friends or anyone that you know, any siblings, stuff like that? And what they were saying was the guys, and this might be my favorite part of it. They were saying the guys don't want to come because no guys go to these events. And I sat there and I'm like, wait a minute. If I was a guy, which I am a guy, as a guy, let's say, as a guy, I would definitely want to go to an event that's a singles event where there are not an overwhelming majority of men, right? Because then you have the opportunity to meet more people. Maybe it's not as advantageous for some of the women, but it's crazy to me that guys wouldn't want to put themselves in a situation where they can meet, very, very nice and lovely women in a singles event.
Yeah, I actually have heard something different. I had a lot of men give me feedback that they thought that too many guys were going to show up. And so when I followed through with some of so that's kind of weird. But I mean, if you're getting one message and I'm getting another message, no wonder dating sucks.
Still sucks.
It still sucks.
That's interesting. Do you think there's just a lot of Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you think there's a lot of miscommunication of not even dating when you meet someone, but miscommunication with others about what dating is like and a misunderstanding of what it's like? Maybe it isn't as bad as we think it is.
Yeah, or just like maybe, not having I don't know, maybe just like off expectations or just making
Yeah.
assumptions maybe about
Assumptions,
what
that's the word I was
that
looking
might
for.
be. Yeah. Cause I was like, it's not expectations, but maybe assumptions. But yeah, I mean, even like this weekend, I mean, when I followed up with some of the men, I'm like, we really needed you. I mean, we had so many women. I mean, it eventually evened out, thankfully. But they were then like so bummed. They're like, oh, I was wondering how it was going to go.
Well, good. Now they should know to come next time.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, I think you're right. Like one lesson learned is we have to condense the timeline or create a window so that we can have people, because it was hard. Some women at the beginning were like ready to leave after an hour or so, but then the guys started coming in. But I think we got to have like a window so people can just sort of come in on their own. But so that was one thing. One thing that I heard, and obviously we heard opposite stories, but what are some of the other things you heard? Because I know we both talked to several people that were there, and we've gotten feedback pretty consistently the last few days. I even had more today that I think I shared with
Hmm.
you earlier. But what were some of the big takeaways that you had, not necessarily from the event itself, but from talking to people and finding out what their dating experience is like and what their struggles are or what works for them?
Well, I think one of the reasons why we had so many people is that they are, and we use this word starving for in-person connection. And I think the number of people that came in through the door just showed that people were dying for an event like this, that they wanted to get off the apps, they wanted to meet people in person. And just a lot of people have, I'm going to call it like normal anxiety and normal nerves about dating in general. I mean, I introduced myself to everybody. I'm like, thank you for coming. Well, I mean, not everybody, too many people, but as
Yeah, there was
many
way
people
too.
as as many people as I tried to talk to. And some people were very nervous. They're like, I'm really nervous being here. I'm like, thank you for telling me. Let me go introduce you to everybody. Or like, let me introduce you to a group of people. Everybody's been so nice so far. And so that's been like also another thing that I noticed is, and like once people got, I think, comfortable, I don't think it took that long. Because I remember one time like standing at the end of the bar and just like looking out at the whole scene and be like, it is really loud in here. Like you could
Hmm.
not even hear the music. But that just like made me so happy to have that.
Yeah, I think so too. I actually, when I was talking to people as the event went on, I was asking, did you get any numbers? Did you give your numbers? Did you set up any date? And I think maybe all but one that I had talked to in the moment. I mean, I don't know how many I talked to, like probably 15, 20 people. Um, each one had
Mhm.
at least gotten one number or given their number to one person. So I think that there was conversations being had that were meaningful and beyond small talk to the point where like you at least want to keep talking to that person. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of what excited me about the event. And then that, and also like thinking about, and we talked about this, but I think it's good to kind of share it. But like what I think made it successful, one of the things I think made it so successful, like in the moment, outside of getting a good turnout, was when you're trying to meet someone in real life or even on a dating app. Like dating apps were supposed to make dating easier, right? You were going to be
Hmm.
able to interact with someone over a text message of sorts or whatever you want to call it, a DM. You were going to learn a little bit about someone from their profile, what they were looking for, what their sense of humor was, prompts, bios, whatever that is, right? So it was going to kind of take away a little bit of the rejection piece if you go up to someone and try and flirt or get a date in real life. But what that led to, as we know, is ghosting and excuse me, endless opportunities and swiping and just keep talking to talk and never ever taking that next step to meet someone if they're even interested in that. And so what I found was very intriguing about this is because this was a singles party and because the vast majority, 95% of the people at
Hmm.
this bar were single, purposefully there, intentionally wanting to meet and talk with other singles. And I think between that and even the simple thing of having name tags, which you pointed out were very popular. People were waiting in line to get name tags. You're
Yeah.
eliminating so many of those initial barriers to entry of sort when it comes to dating. Because when you're at a bar and you see someone, we talked about this on previous podcasts, like you don't know, are they single? if they are single, are they interested? Are they there to meet someone? Did they just get out of a breakup and they're there with their friends, or they're, not in the right headspace or in the mindset to do that? Here, everyone was there essentially for the same reason, and that was to mix and mingle with other singles. And so I think that alone in this environment gives people a little bit more confidence, because it eliminates some of the beginning parts of meeting someone in real life that are so challenging. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. Because I mean, I think I can't remember if we talked about this on the podcast or just off, because I know we've had some conversations, but like especially when if women expect men to approach, but the men are too scared or they don't want to come across as a creeper. But here it was like, guys, that's exactly what the women are expecting you to do. And it actually even the playing field, because the women, I mean, listen, ladies, if you're attracted to a guy across the bar at a singles event, it's up to you to go up to him.
And I think we saw a lot of that too. I saw a lot of that.
Yeah. And, I just like, I mean, I loved it. People were, and some people even came up to me and they're like, I really like so-and-so, or I think, they're cute. Like, can you get me an introduction? Or they seem really popular, like, do you know them? Can you like help me to have a conversation? I mean, but it was great because, I mean, even on the dating app, I mean, you could mindlessly swipe, right? Or like you could just not even pay attention or just be super critical. But at least in these situations, and we talked about this, like the hope was that for it to be so low pressure that even if you just have a conversation and like make a friend or just practice, like if you're a nervous, shy person, like you just practice having a conversation with someone who just happens to be another single at the bar, then, I mean, this was so successful even from that regard.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm looking forward to see if we hear from people who like went on a successful date or even end up going on several dates or whatever that is. Because I know anyone who exchanged numbers or set up a date, I ask them to follow up because I'm just curious. Because one of the things, and gosh, man, my memory is fried. I'm like cooked today, but
it's been a weekend.
It's been a long weekend, but I think one of the things that was interesting to me, I'm always curious because it's been so long since I've dated at this point, like regularly in the game, that I wonder sometimes if like dating in real life or meeting in real life ends up falling into the same sort of habits or traps as dating on the apps, where you just text endlessly, someone ghosts someone, never happens kind of thing. But I do think there is an element of, especially if you've had a conversation with that person in real life, there's an element of sort of that connection, like human to human connection beyond a screen has already been made. But I am curious, like, what do you think about that? Do you think that we'll see similar habits in some cases as if you're dating on dating apps be the follow up to these events? Or do you think that people will be more engaged because they met in real life?
I mean, my hope is the latter, obviously, but I think if someone who comes to these events and has been on the apps or is still currently on the apps and they're finding themselves engaging in the same kinds of behaviors, like being super dismissive or not giving someone a chance, then I think that can be like a reason for them to self-reflect and figure out maybe they have some work to do. Maybe they have some growth opportunities, because to me, there's not like, I mean, I call it second order change, where you could change like you have to change your belief system, right? Or like you have to change your mindset. You have to have some kind of a shift, like an overarching like belief. And so regardless of whether or not you meet someone in person or on an app, if you still engage in the same patterns and there's something going on up here that needs to change in order for you to be successful on an app or meeting someone in person. So I would just say, because we're planning on doing more of these events, people have been blowing both of us up asking when the next one is. And so my hope is that when people either incorporate more of the in-person events, and if they still continue to use the apps, to see, does their behavior change at all? And if not, then they could always reach out to me and I could help them. I've got a staff too that can help. So, because it is important. I mean, it doesn't take me that long to figure out relationship or dating blocks. it's like, all right, let's go. Like, I'm pretty good about finding patterns pretty quickly to help people identify, okay, this is like where you're getting stuck, or this is where you're getting in your own way. So, because I think sometimes people think like therapy will take like months and months, if not years and years. I mean, I do kind of like quick therapy where a lot of my clients come in because they want answers. And so if people are struggling with, dating in any way, they could definitely reach out.
Yeah, I definitely highly recommend that. Um, I know you've shared a few of them, people's anxiety of meeting in person. They wanted help. They wanted an introduction. Was there anything anyone said to you that you think would be beneficial to share, and then kind of share the anecdote to it? Because I know I have one or two I can share too. But you
So,
could probably correct me if I'm wrong on the
no, I mean,
anecdote.
I want to know, yeah, I want to know what people have said to you too. But I had one woman who was literally, she was like, Anita, where are the good guys? Like, where are they? I want someone who is emotionally available, like who's kind, and she goes, and who goes to therapy. But I told her, I said, the male clients that I've worked with, again, they're so scared to approach someone at the bar, where I have to tell my male clients, literally the women are there because they want to be approached. And we talked about this in the podcast. So like there's caveats, right? I mean, if women are kind of closed off with body language, sure, maybe they don't want to be approached, but there are definitely women going out trying to meet men. And so I told her, I'm like, I know it's not always easy. I think the dating apps have ruined dating, or they're probably more emotionally unavailable men on the apps. And so, I hope. And then she was like about to walk out to dinner, and I introduced her to one of the guys. And then at the end, as she was walking out, she mouthed like, "Thank you" to me. Because I was
Oh,
like, at least she
good.
had an opportunity, because she came like early and there weren't a lot of men there. But so like, again, the message to men, because and even like I talk to men at bars where once I tell them what I do for a living, it just makes for interesting conversation. And I will suddenly just randomly ask, like, do you go up to women, or like, do you feel confident in approaching women? And some are like, oh hell no, I would never do that. There's no way, or like they have anxiety, they're too nervous. And so, again, just like the messages that I was getting from a lot of women is they really do want to meet the men. And even when I was asking men, hey, do you have single friends? They're like, oh, not anyone that I would recommend going to an event. So if you're a good guy, and you're a good guy, and you get feedback that you're a good guy, we are begging you to please come to our events, because the women are literally dying to find you.
Yeah.
Maybe
And I
not
would
literally
say,
dying, but they're dying to find you.
well, they might die waiting to find you if you don't come to the event.
Yeah, like our skeleton.
Exactly, like
Yeah.
our skeleton, the real. And then I will say, if you're one of those guys that is not been reinforced as a good guy, don't come to the event unless you want to become a good guy. And
Yeah.
maybe that's something you can help with too. What I would really like to see at our next event, now that I'm thinking about it, I would obviously like to see more men come, but I think, again, this is an observation. I felt like the women were making more first moves than the men
Ah,
at the event. And at
I
least
love
maybe
it.
that's the ones that I talked to. And by the way, like a lot of them came up to me. So maybe that's
Yeah.
indicative of that. But when they came up to me to like tell me or ask about the event or tell me that they liked the event or whatever, I mean, so maybe that's why. But I was surprised because a lot of them also said they were going up to the men, or they were trying to go up to the men. In some cases, the one person was relatively popular among a few women that I told you about, and they were
Yeah.
trying to talk, trying to be proactive and go up to it. So I think that's nice to see, because we do have, as we've talked about, we do have
Mhm.
some shifts in society that have happened and in our culture that have happened, where I do think women, they shouldn't bear all the responsibility all the responsibility by any means.
Right.
But I think that if you are interested in someone, you can go up. Like, that's okay. You can go up to them and strike up a conversation and see if they're interested.
Yeah. And I mean, I haven't gotten that feedback, so that's awesome that, women have saying that. I mean, that, I could reach out to some of the men who came to the event and ask, like, you know, if that happened. But even just personally, I mean, I've never had a guy, like when I've approached him, like ever in my life, be like, why are you talking to me? Or like, why
Because
are you,
it
why are
never
you coming
never
up?
happens.
It does. No, but that's the thing is, I mean, I've never had that kind of a response. So like, I think men appreciate it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
men want to feel desired too, or men want to know that they're, someone finds them attractive. So I just think if we kind of like we've talked about in the podcast, like a little bit less pressure to just have a conversation. And I also think that this event did that because sure, people were, wanting to find somebody, but there were also connections that people were making on a friendship level. And one woman even told me she got a job opportunity out of Friday
Yeah,
night.
I heard that's a great one.
And so, but I think that kind of eases the pressure, and everyone, like even I was apologizing to the women in the beginning. I'm like, I swear the men are coming, like just hang in there. And they're like, Anita, it's fine. Like we're having such a good time. Or like,
Mm-hmm.
this is such a great space and I'm getting to know great women. So like everyone was just so gracious. Like that's the word that I, had for Friday was everyone was just like so gracious. And then, the fun really happened when the guy showed up.
Yeah, that's true. Well, next time
So.
we'll get, I think you jokingly said we should do start time for women is 6 p.m. or for men is 6 p.m. Start time for women is 7 p.m. So we'll get everyone there
Yeah.
around 7:30.
Yeah, I think that would be funny. Or just lesson learned. I mean, doing an end time,
Yeah.
and you had the quick, what was your tagline? Like doors closed at
Oh,
8.
doors close at 8, but we're staying late.
Yeah, something like that. We'll figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. So, so we talked quite a bit this weekend about doing another one,
Mhm.
and doing these events ongoing and learning from what worked and making things better and all that stuff. What would you, two last things here. What would you like to see as a single yourself? And let's say you're not hosting. What would you like to see in a singles event, where you would feel like you're set up for success to maybe meet someone and exchange phone numbers?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I just felt like a lot of the men that were there I already knew. And so I think you asked me, like, did you meet someone? And I said no. So, I mean, I say it was like a default of me being the host, but
But also, you were
um,
randomly going up to people at networking events and out at restaurants and stuff and inviting them. So some of them you knew, but you probably didn't know, right?
yeah, I mean,
But
well,
then a lot of
that
them
was
you
just
did
like this
know.
week, yeah, or just like reaching out. I mean, I was reaching out to as many men that I knew on like social media, and then I did go to a networking event the night before. I'm like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? Please
Hmm.
come. I don't know. I'd have to think about the second one because honestly, like just having more men, especially ones that I didn't know, would be my ideal, especially if I wasn't the host. But what would you say? What would you do differently?
I would definitely put a timeline on it. I think that
Yeah,
would have been beneficial. I wouldn't say it ends at a certain time, but I would not want to like put that kind of pressure on because we had people stay till 10:30 until it really
yeah,
started to dwindle down a little bit. So I wouldn't put an end time on it, but I would definitely put like a cap on when we're letting people in for it, I guess,
yeah,
because I would like to see where we hit that groove at probably like 7:30, 8 p.m. to like 9,
mm-hmm.
10 p.m. I think that was
Yeah.
the groove, right? That was when we were
We're
probably
so
over
busy.
capacity for the bar, as we found out later. But I would like to see that. And then I think the only other thing that I would like to do personally, and this is more of a reflection of what I think I can contribute, like in there, I would love to go play wingman for more people, and
Mm,
introduce people. And even, there were a couple that I had sent out. I'm like, go find someone that you want to meet and I'll introduce you or start up a
yeah.
conversation. And, both, or I shouldn't say both, two people did that and said, well, there's no one here. And I was like, okay, well, are you sure? Because there's like 150, 200 people here right now. But I think being a little more proactive on that for myself, I would like to do. Now, if I was attending an event,
Hmm.
um, believe it or not, I'm shy, and
Mm,
I am not the kind of person that will typically go up to someone in a bar and just talk to them. So I think,
hmm.
what we did a little bit of, and I think would be even better, is having icebreakers. And we had those cards
Yeah.
for prompts all over the tables, which were great. People really liked that. I think maybe there's just a good way to sort of capitalize on that and sort of amplify that a little bit so that someone who's a little bit shyer like I am, would feel comfortable, taking a prompt or maybe starting a conversation that I wouldn't otherwise start.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about some of those events or some of those, like, maybe making the questions more visible, and creating some of our own. So that's definitely something that, I
Yeah.
would like to do as well. Because if people get kind of stuck, in conversation, or they're so nervous and they don't know what kind of question to ask, or like how to, continue the conversation, then they could turn to one of those questions, just to make it easy for themselves. And that's the thing, I think also, is that, I'm a therapist, and if you haven't been dating in a while. And so I think, and the feedback that we get from people, but I think both of us are really sensitive to people who might feel anxious or nervous or
Hmm.
shy at these events. I think that's been something that both of us have been pretty, like, kind of kept top of mind, like we knew not everybody's going to come in, guns a blazing, like, okay, I'm ready to like talk to everybody. But enough people did tell me that they felt like, and I said, oh, you could introduce yourself to someone. And, I had a few women were like, I'm not really good at that. And I'm like, thank you for letting me know.
Yes.
Like, I will help you. And so, like, if people are, maybe scared or like nervous. I mean, even there was another woman who brought, I think, her married sister because she was so shy. I'm like, hey, if you
Mm.
need this support person here, great. And practice. Like, here's literally everybody here at this bar has been so nice, and they're all wanting to like either meet somebody or at least make some friends. So this is a great place for you to practice having conversations. And so just for anyone listening, is that that you Nick and I, we have like this top of mind that we do want this
Yeah.
to be like a fun, that's why like I always kept saying, like, low pressure, this is like low pressure, just to make sure that the people who like are nervous or too anxious, like, please come out, because we will help you and support you in any way.
Yeah, and I think that's so good and so true. And one of the other things we've kind of talked about, and I I want I have so much pride in this event, especially how it turned out. Even though you did, a lot of the groundwork to set it up and to drive attendance and some very serious guerrilla marketing, and I just did the billboard of posting about it on my social media, right? So I did the easy. I'll hang up a billboard. You go do all the guerrilla marketing stuff. But well,
That's
what I
fine.
think is been very personally satisfying for me is that I know how hard it is out there. I know how hard it is to
Hmm.
find love. I know how hard it is to even try and interact with people. And if we can just make that a little bit simpler for someone, if we can give
Yeah.
someone some like real time coaching or nudges in the right direction, I think it's totally worth the time and effort that we've put into it, because it is really hard and people are, habits have changed. People are
Hmm.
very used to digital interactions, but then they're also very used to what comes with those digital interactions on the apps. And I think in person, um, group settings, whether it be events, it's parties as we call them, or whatever that is, I think that is really the way that we're going to revert back to finding and meeting people. So if we can put
Hmm.
those on the calendar and we can give people the opportunity to attend events where they can maybe meet someone that they want to date or become an eventual partner to, it gives me a lot of satisfaction to do that. So I think
Hmm.
whether that's more events, nudging people when we're at the events, helping people when we're at the events, I find a lot of satisfaction in that, and trying to sort of rebuild a future of dating that can actually be sustainable and not so traumatic and traumatizing and just disappointing. Like the amount of disappointment that people feel,
Yeah.
we're helping to quell that, and I find a lot of kind of peace and harmony in that.
Yeah. I mean, you saw me get emotional on Saturday when I was talking about, just being like so happy with how the event turned out. I don't know. I think it just like hit me. Like, we had over 250 people who were just so, just like, I think we used the word hungry, right? Like, just so
Hmm.
starved and like hungry for that kind of connection. And, clearly people want to meet somebody. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
it's so obvious, but like, why does it, like, it's just so hard,
it is.
and hopefully, with these events that we can make it easier for people. And like I said, I mean, if whether you meet someone on an app or an event, if you don't change your mindset or if you don't work on yourself, you got to be vulnerable. And that's the thing, is these events do require some vulnerability, because we make it a little bit easier because almost everyone there is looking for love. And so, because you might have we did have some married people at the bar that, were like, we didn't know this was a singles event, and hightailed it out of there. But, I just think we make it a little bit easier, and people can take advantage of that. And I know we haven't set the next date for, the next event, but if people we talked about this on the podcast, people can sharpen their skills before the next event as well. So whether they, work with me or another therapist, or they just practice okay, well, I do get anxious talking to a stranger. So you know what, until, this next event, I'm going to make it a mission to talk to a stranger every week, and then it will get easier. Like I told that woman, I'm like, you keep coming to these events and you keep talking to people, I think you're going to be fine in no time.
Yeah, I agree. Well, this was good. I'm glad we were kind of having these conversations. I thought it would be good to just have them on part 3, I guess, follow up podcast. And I mean, the last thing I'll say, and then if you have anything you want to say, I think, again, I just want to reiterate what I learned from all of this is, one, there's some really awesome single people in Chicago that are willing to step out of their comfort zone and come to an event like this in hopes of meeting people of value that could become a part of their life. And then 2, I think that it's time to get off the effing apps and meet people in real life. And I am going to encourage everyone to turn off your app and find, if you're in Chicago, which is where we are right now for these events, follow us, find our event, or try and find a singles event near you and step out of your comfort zone and start to get comfortable with human connection that happens in real life.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself, Nick.
Awesome. Well, once again, where can people find you on social media? And then we will work on our next event, and I'll make sure that we share those on this podcast too when we have them.
Yeah, absolutely. I am Anita on Love on Instagram and X. And then my website is relationshipreality312.com. And then we are starting a newsletter separate for some of these events. So if people want to sign up, then they could just DM me their email and I will put them on our list.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for hopping on kind of last minute here to talk about this. And yeah,
of course.
We'll chat again soon. And then for everyone next week, I have a really good episode that was supposed to drop tomorrow, but it's going to drop next week now. But make sure you check that out. Leave a review, like the show, subscribe to the show. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe as well. And we will be back with an all new episode again next week. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this clip from the full episode of Eyes Wide Open. Please like and subscribe for daily clips and new episodes that drop every Tuesday. I appreciate you.